Many communities face a heavy price tag to replace old lead water lines.
Each community is trying to figure out a way that they can get them replaced where the sole burden isn't on them.
The impact in Bloomington Normal, coming up on WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. Good evening, I'm John Norton. Also on today's show, Bloomington's new budget plan hikes city staff salaries by 10%. The city manager will explain.
Some of that is catch-up. Some of that is, trying to meet the increased demands that we're seeing, the growth in our community.
And the city looks to condemn a downtown eyesore. Those stories follow a Bloomington Normal News update just ahead. This is Sound Ideas on 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network.
Support for WGLT comes from Bloomington Normal Audiology. Hear My Story continues with local patient Paul Brandt.
Honestly, I appreciate working with BNA. I would just say that I appreciate all the tough times with me, patience and persistence with me.
Paul's full story can be found at bnaudiology.com.
From the campus of Illinois State University in Normal, this is WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. Good evening, I'm John Norton. The city of Bloomington and town of Normal will spend about $101 million over the next decade to remove lead water pipes leading to people's homes, most of that in Bloomington. WGLT's Charlie Schlenker reports.
By now, most people know how lead can hurt brain development of children and cause organ damage and neurological problems in adults. A lot of people have heard about a serious lead poisoning from the municipal water supply in Flint, Michigan some years ago. Since then, the rate of children diagnosed with ADHD or learning disabilities has doubled in Flint. It's a potential catastrophe in many cities and towns. Bloomington Water Director Ed Andrews says lead was once considered a miracle metal. It's easy to shape and doesn't rust. That was before society knew it could poison people. Andrews says many cities, including Bloomington, had ordinances governing its use.
Up until 1956, it was mandated that I'll call it the gooseneck, the connection from the main to the curb stop, when a developer built a subdivision, that portion of the line had to be lead.
When the ordinance was updated in 1956, the city allowed copper or lead. Andrews says there are no records that developers continued to use lead after 56, but it could have happened. Only in 1982 did the city get rid of lead as an option. And in 1992, the Environmental Protection Agency started requiring communities to test for lead in the water. Bloomington and Normal have not had problems with free lead in the water, nor have most communities. That's because over time a coating forms on the lead lines, which minimizes the chance it will leach into drinking water. Ed Andrews says Bloomington's water treatment process even helps.
Part of that is from our filtration process up at the plant. A byproduct is phosphate in that system, so that's part of that coating that you see downstream in the distribution pipes that we benefit from.
The feds have long said leaving lead water service lines around is a bad idea. The EPA requires all communities to inventory their lead lines by mid-April. Bloomington and Normal are both in good shape to meet the deadline. The communities have been working on it for a while. Normal City Manager Pam Reese says the town did some of the inventory years ago when it updated how it measures water use.
When we were installing new meters, the staff had an opportunity to take an inventory of the service line coming into the homes. So that really helped us complete our inventory.
The inventories show Normal has about 100 known or suspected lead or galvanized water service lines. Bloomington has more than 10,000. That's a huge difference. Part of it is the size of the system. Bloomington has about 32,000 total service lines. Normal has half that. John Burkhart is the water director for Normal. He says another part of the explanation is that Bloomington is older. A lot of housing in Normal went up in the 1950s and later, when lead wasn't used.
And I also know that the town's been working on replacing lead lines that I've got some data back to in the 80s.
Anytime there was a water shut-off for non-payment or when a water shut-off broke, Normal looked and replaced lead when workers found it. That was long before the EPA started talking about mandated removal of lead lines. Town staff credit then City Manager Dave Anderson and Water Director Joe Martin for getting the early start on the work that is now required. Communities have to replace 10% of the lead lines per year over the next decade. It's not just lead service lines. Normal City Manager Pam Reese says it's galvanized pipe too, sometimes.
The EPA is concerned with proving that galvanized lines were never at one point attached to a lead line. So it's possible that if there's a galvanized service on the private property side, and at one point maybe the municipality had a lead line attached to the valve, that the EPA says there's a chance that that would be at risk.
Lead can attach to the surface of galvanized pipes, but over time the particles can enter your drinking water. Some other cities with infrastructure of about the same age are further along than Bloomington. Often, though, the reason for that progress was not a good thing. Galesburg, for instance, had elevated lead levels during testing of its water, something Bloomington has not had. After a long discussion with the EPA, Galesburg got to work about 20 years ago and is pretty much done with its lead service line problem. Until the 10-year federal mandated deadline to finish the job came down the pike, Bloomington's situation was not as urgent. Bloomington will take the full decade the feds allowed to do the work. Since Normal's scope is so much smaller, the town plans to finish in 2027. Bloomington estimates it will cost $10,000 per service line. Normal estimates slightly less. Nevertheless, Normal Water Director John Burkhart says it will still cost the town $1 million, or 1% of Bloomington's tally.
It's a really challenging scenario with a lot of utilities. Each community is trying to figure out a way that they can get them replaced where the sole burden isn't on them.
Communities traditionally ask homeowners to pay for the portion of the water service line replacement on their properties. The city pays for the distance between the main and the property line. Is it mandated that the homeowner has to pay?
That's a tricky question, because the EPA mandates that the water utility gets it replaced. They don't care how it's done.
Burkhart says Decatur has a program to reimburse homeowners a certain dollar amount for the cost of replacement. He says Springfield has something similar. Normal has offered a zero-interest loan and had precisely one property owner take them up on it. Bloomington is going a different route, according to Ed Andrews.
The city pays all of it. We have built total replacement into our rate increase instead of trying to compel the homeowner for that portion of the line from the curb stop to the house.
If the cities and towns have to do it anyway, why would a property owner volunteer to pay? Normal's John Burkhart.
My opinion, it's the right thing to do is for the homeowner to replace it, because so many homeowners in the town have paid to replace theirs for the last 30, 40 years.
Nevertheless, the town will likely also end up footing the entire bill. Now, Bloomington's Ed Andrews says lead lines inside the house were not common, but other kinds of piping were, including galvanized. You recall galvanized pipes can attract free lead and let it loose over time. It could still be a good idea to replace galvanized pipes inside a residence. That responsibility stays with the homeowner. What are ways a municipality can encourage property owners to check their internal pipes too? Normal City Manager Pam Reese.
Well, I don't have a positive solution or any solution to that issue, frankly.
Bloomington's target is 1,000 line replacements per year. Ed Andrews says there are some logical ways to stack the work. The city will also be replacing 6 miles of water main per year, and it makes sense to do those service lines at the same time. He says water main replacement will start in the older, denser sections of town, also where there are more lead service lines. Andrews says the city will also do batches of lead lines apart from the water mains to make up its annual quota, and there are other places at the top of the list.
There's some in-home daycare facilities we would ensure that they're not on a lead service. That would be a priority. There's also some low to moderate income neighborhood potential incentives that we can apply for some cost share.
Normal plans to pay for its lead line removal by reallocating money from other projects where the bids came in under the estimate. At a $100 million price tag, Bloomington can't do that. You may recall last November, the Bloomington City Council approved the first water and sewer rate increase in 12 years. A portion of that money will go to lead removal. Another portion will fund water main replacement, and there are other costs to improve water flow system-wide. The first round of the Bloomington rate increase hits May 1. I'm Charlie Schlenker.
Coming up tomorrow on Sound Ideas, we'll kick off Women's History Month with a new series. We are profiling 21 women who have shaped Bloomington Normal over the years. We'll give you all the details on tomorrow's Sound Ideas.
European leaders sent a letter to House Speaker Mike Johnson asking him to release the $60 billion the White House requested for aid to Ukraine.
The will to help Ukraine is there, but there is obstacles which are trying to stop it. It needs a little bit more convincing.
The president of the Estonian parliament on why they sent the letter. That's tomorrow on Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm co-host Dave Martinez. Join us for Morning Edition weekdays from 4 to 9 a.m. on WGLT.
Stories and conversations around Bloomington Normal and McLean County. This is WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. The city of Bloomington has filed for condemnation of the Front and Center building in downtown. The former Montgomery Ward's department store building has been deteriorating for decades and been a matter of concern during the administrations of at least 3 mayors. Several city attempts to encourage or provoke redevelopment have guttered out. In this interview with WGLT's Charlie Schlenker, City Manager Tim Gleason explains what led the city to take this step and what happens next.
Property owner has rights, and we've seen that with many other properties throughout the city. We try to gain compliance, and we know that this will likely be something that plays out several months. The property owner can object. This could end up in court, and it could turn into a years-long process, but this is a highly visible property in our downtown, and we've been trying to address the state of disrepair and the lack of occupancy since, I started here 6 years ago, and know it was even before then.
A long time before. What all has the city done before it felt that it was pushed to this point?
A lot of back and forth communication, Charlie, with the property owner. And really, it's not just on the compliance issues. It really is related to economic development, where we try to come alongside on this property, many others, to try to assist as best we can, respecting that this is privately owned, but trying to move this and turn this into a property that, is occupied and better used to the city and the owners, hopefully.
Will condemnation force them to tear it down?
All the above is possible. It's, not uncommon in communities, especially when we're talking about old schools, old churches, where you go through a process or in a state of disrepair. It goes to a point to where the property is turned over to the city, and then the cities are left with the demo that's required. And hoping that's not the case here, but that's a very real possibility.
When was the last time the city acted this decisively on a property that was non-performing or was deteriorating?
I would say the C2 East building is probably the most recent. And there's others, but when I'm talking about prominent buildings that the community is very aware of, the C2 East building. And in those conversations, truly, we've realized what we want to see, and that's property ownership has changed hands. It's into the hands of someone that can do right by the building, and C2 East is definitely a success story.
What do you want there?
Really open to many possibilities. That is directly catty corner across the street from the Coliseum. And we know that that is a location that is ripe for opportunity. So what comes, I don't know, but open to the conversation.
A boutique hotel or upscale hotel has been a possibility mentioned over the course of the last 20 years. Is that your number one preference, or is there something else?
I don't know that it's my number one preference. That definitely has been the thing that I have heard of the most the 6 years that I've been here, and was always open to that. The city felt that was a great possibility, but not exclusively. We know that there's other opportunities there. But we do also know, and the reason that the city's taking the action that it is now, that it truly is in a state of disrepair. We have those concerns, and we realize that the impacts on our infrastructure and those surrounding buildings, it's not just exclusive to that front and center building.
What impacts?
Water, sewer, the infrastructure into that building. It has gotten to a point of disrepair where a clogged sewer system or water lines that aren't being maintained properly do have impacts on the surrounding properties.
Like what?
Just backups. Not suggesting that that's happening, but want to make sure that it does not happen. So this is truly a natural point in the deterioration of that building, that the steps that the city is taking are proper.
This is Sound Ideas. I'm Charlie Schlenker. We're talking with Bloomington City Manager Tim Gleason. Let's move to the budget. The 2025 budget for salaries is up 10%, or $4.7 million. Would you break that out? Where are you adding staff, and what level of pay increase for existing staff does that entail?
I'm going to go back even beyond my time getting here. So 2010, post-recession, we had a workforce that was, I'm going to say, mid-600s. So now we've grown over the past couple of fiscal years, and then to this upcoming FY25, our full-time employee count is going to be just shy of 710. I think it's 705, 706 is what we will have on the books. That growth has been, one, a recovery from the reductions post-recession, 12, 13, 14 years ago, but also there are so many things that are occurring within the community related to capital projects, infrastructure improvement. Some of that is catch-up. Some of that is, trying to meet the increased demands that we're seeing, the growth in our community. So it's for those reasons that we have the numbers that are in the proposed FY25 budget. So they're related to infrastructure. They're trying to keep up with some of the reductions that we saw 10 or 12 years ago. And hopefully the community and the elected officials, have, not paid attention, but have heard the transparency in our conversations justifying the need for these increases.
Where are you adding?
Public safety, both police and fire, is a growth area. Our IT department is one that has grown over the years. The Economic Community Development Department, if the community recalls, I created an Economic Development Department, merged that with the Community Development Department, so there's been growth there. Just added, even though I trimmed when I first walked into the organization on the administrative side with some lower level executive assistant positions, I added a second deputy city manager. And so there's been that kind of what I will call modest growth. But if you track the ratio that we had per million on our budget, when I first came here, we were pushing 4.5 per million, and that's full-time employees per million. Now with growth and then also with the inflation component, we are actually below 4 per million of the budgeted amount. It is proof that we are being more efficient with the employee headcount and the use of taxpayer dollars in our budget.
Governor Pritzker has proposed eliminating the grocery sales tax. What's the impact to Bloomington, and how do you make up for that?
It's a number. We think that it's going to be nearly a $3 million hit. So unexpected. And then ironically, Mayor Millawambwe hosted the governor. Town of Normal joined us just earlier this week. We talked about that. The governor said that this is a regressive tax. It hurts those of lower socioeconomic, and it's something that he feels strongly about. He did say this, and he's right, that if a municipality feels so strongly about this is something that they can adopt at the local level if a loss of this revenue is something that's going to be that impactful. We're hoping, and I think the Illinois Municipal League holds the same opinion, that if this is going to occur with the grocery tax, that LGDF is also looked at possibly restoring older numbers, which almost identically would replace that loss to the city.
Unpack LTDF for listeners, would you?
LGDF, Local Government Distributive Fund.
And that's a portion of the state income tax that traditionally had gone to municipalities, but that the legislature took away in tight fiscal times.
Correct.
This is Sound Ideas. I'm Charlie Schlenker. We're talking with Bloomington City Manager Tim Gleason. We're hearing that the planned and long-hoped-for opening of O'Neill Pool by the traditional summer start on Memorial Day may be in jeopardy. Update us on that. Will it open even if there's work yet to be completed?
Yeah, it will open Memorial Day. It's not in jeopardy at all. A great relationship with PJ Hare, the director, Paul Bright, have conversations often on this project. There were some supply chain issues, also some challenges with the aquatics subcontractor that PJ Hare had, but all those have been worked through. Go back to last year. Once we knew that we missed the Memorial Day, all for good reasons. I mean, unfortunate, but good reasons that we did not take issue with. And it was pushed to July, and sometime in July to open. We also were a part of that decision because to train aquatic staff to be able to staff that just for 4 or 6 weeks before it closes again, that just did not seem like a good use of taxpayer dollars. So we decided to slow down. Let's do this right. And that right has occurred, and we will open Memorial Day. The additional work that might need to be done, it's cosmetic. It's not operational or functional. That pool will open, and it's great for the community.
What cosmetic work might still need to happen?
Landscaping, that kind of stuff. If you drive by it, really everything is in place. The testing for the water portion to meet some of the criteria for the state of Illinois, that's going to occur in March. The weather has definitely cooperated, and looking forward to this being a great amenity for the region, not just the city.
That's Bloomington City Manager Tim Gleason. He spoke with WGLT's Charlie Schlenker. Monday on Sound Ideas, hear how the city of Bloomington wants additional services for the sales tax money it contributes to McLean County's mental health care. And that is Sound Ideas today, WGLT's news magazine made possible in part by Bloomington Normal Audiology. I'm John Norton with story help from WGLT's Charlie Schlenker today. Ryan Toohey edits Sound Ideas. You can find all of our Sound Ideas interviews and stories at WGLT.org, and you can subscribe to Sound Ideas on the NPR app and wherever you get your podcast. And we would love to know what you think of Sound Ideas. Comment on our Facebook page. We're WGLT FM. At WGLT News is our handle on Instagram and Threads. This is 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network.